This is a Fox News alert. It looks like terror. France struck once again at 7:30 Eastern in the United States and 1:30 a.m. in France. 73 people dead and more than 100 injured. A large truck plowing through a Bastille Day celebration, mowing down people. The chaos and carnage is almost unbelievable. And now the local officials saying arms and grenades were found inside that truck. Let's go live to FSN correspondent Kevin Ozebek right next door in Brussels. And Kevin, you have covered so much terrorism, the airport and subway in Brussels, and now this.
Yeah, well, in fact, Greta, this morning I interviewed Gilles de Courcouronnes. He is the EU, the European Union counterterrorism coordinator, and he says there's no question right now that this is a continent under threat. And right now, Greta, really what's so concerning for intelligence agents here is the fact that ISIS is losing territory at a pretty fast rate in both Iraq and Syria. And the reason this is so concerning to security officials is because they believe that the few thousand Europeans who've went over to fight for ISIS will now be pushed out of the Middle East and will want to come back home and possibly initiate attacks here back at home. But also the EU counterterrorism coordinator says, as he views it, and keep in mind this all happened before these events unfolded in Nice, that even though the threat is rising, the risk isn't rising because European intelligence communities are now sharing information better. There's clearly much more visible security all across this continent, but still you look at what the events unfolding right now in Nice, and you really do have to question, is Europe doing enough? And what else could possibly be done from intelligence agents here in Europe to try to thwart these threats? But obviously, it's a very difficult job, some security experts have told me, an impossible task to completely eliminate the threat when you look at the nature of this enemy.
When you talk about the threat, I mean, the problem is that, it's not like one army against one army. It is these terrorists who just kill innocent civilians. I mean, people, this is Bastille Day. It's like our 4th of July in the United States. People were out celebrating. There were fireworks. They were gathering. I mean, and it's like they have, the immorality and cruelty. People keep referring to it as tragedy. And it's like, I just think that's such a soft word because it is just so evil. It is anything but a tragedy. It just brings out the worst, showing these horrible terrorists that continue to hit, whether it's Charlie Hebdo or the theater on November 13th and the cafe in Paris. We've got Brussels and the subway and and the airport. I mean, it just goes on and on, Kevin. It just doesn't stop, Kevin. So what does the EU counterterrorism coordinator say they're going to do?
Well, he says there still has to be an even greater push for the various European intelligence agencies to continue to share even more information. He says he's seen a visible increase in the sharing of information since the Paris and November attacks, but that has to be upped even more. The EU has pushed through a number of laws, including this passenger name record, so they can track everyone leaving the EU and heading to places like Turkey, who may then funnel their way down to Syria. But another independent security expert who I spoke to today, who is a former French spy, says really he believes the only thing that this continent really can do to really up the game and try to diminish the threat is to jail, imprison anyone who can be deemed radicalized. Now, of course, that's a very tough sell to the European public. This is a continent where freedom of speech, for the most part, is celebrated and cherished. So it's hard to imagine that being passed across the various capitals of Europe. But he says, really, at this point, that's what has to be done.
And I think that, we demand so much of our governments to try to protect us. I think it also is important to note, at least here in the United States, is that everyone always sees something or may have seen something. It says, see something, say something. I mean, someone must have seen this guy, put grenades into this truck or been suspicious. And, it's always our unwillingness to sort of want to talk or speak up. But that's, that will also likewise give us greater protection. But anyway, Kevin, thank you.